Hello and welcome back to this Orbiter 2016 video series. I'm Tex and this is episode 5 of Journey to Saturn. In the previous episode we arrived here at Saturn, and in this episode we need to get over to Titan and link up with MAV, which was sent in advance of us, and it's currently orbiting about 600 kilometers above the surface of Titan. So we need to get over there, link up with it, and get our crew over so we can actually land that vessel on the surface of Titan in the next episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, here we are on my favorite day of the week. We're here back in Orbiter. Before we actually start talking about the episode, let me just mention I do apologize, the video is a little bit late. It is Tuesday, but I've been sick for like the past week. My voice has been absolutely terrible. I have not been able to do any audio recording at all. It's slowly coming back to normal. You can probably tell it's not completely normal still, but I had to re-record the first half of this episode, and I wasn't able to get that done until like literally today. My voice is sort of well enough to do that, and I do apologize. You might notice like halfway through the episode my voice goes back to its normal pitch, I guess, at, like I said, about halfway through. So anyways, I was able to get this episode recorded and out today for you guys because I know you guys really always look forward to that. While I've been sick and unable to do any audio recording in the background, I've sort of been working on my website. I've completely revamped it. I actually installed some forum software on there that I had just sitting around, and I thought I would use that to basically announce news and video releases, and then also maybe some type of perks for members. So go by there, check it out. It's texfilms.com. It's all one word. And feel free to register an account on the forum there. It's totally free, and like I said, I'm thinking about posting some type of early release stuff or just special things for you guys that would like to converse with me on that forum. And but my videos will continue as usual. Nothing is changing there. So so it's time for our first mid-course correction. Let's go ahead and get started. So what I've done is I'm just pointed retrograde. And I'm going to adjust, looking at the right side over there, I'm going to adjust that line of nodes so that it sits right over our periapsis at Titan, similar to what we did when we arrived at Saturn. Okay, so I've got the line of nodes sitting right over periapsis, and then I want to also make sure that periapsis is at 600 kilometers, and there we go. Really just took a few little adjustments with linear RCS, really not bad. I might shoot it just slightly over 600 if I can, but really not too big of a deal. The important thing here is that I want to make sure that that line of nodes is on periapsis, because we're going to use that to basically to adjust our orbit insertions, so our orbit insertion burn, so that we can set up a rendezvous with MAV. So let's go ahead and actually target MAV. It's actually bar zoom, I guess is how you say that, on the orbit MFT, so we can actually see its altitude there and its periapsis and apoapsis. Actually looks like its periapsis has dropped down a little under 600 kilometers there, so but that's okay. It's still acceptable. Okay, so the important course correction has been completed. We have that line of nodes sitting right over periapsis, and that looks good. So let's go ahead and time accelerate, and we're going to continue drifting towards Titan. And I think we're going to get probably quite a bit closer here before we do much anything else. We'll just monitor periapsis at Titan and make sure that it stays pretty close to 600 kilometers. Okay, so one thing I need to mention here as we've cut forward in time is that on the right MFD you see periapsis is 622.9 kilometers, and I'm adjusting it now, but the mistake that I made is when I swung the line of nodes over periapsis looking at the right MFD, the map program on the right MFD, I made the mistake of setting the periapsis over there at 600 kilometers as well. What I needed to be looking at was the left side where we're actually targeting Titan. That periapsis, which is now at 607.9 kilometers, that is the periapsis that I should be concerning myself with, not the periapsis on the right side. I don't know what happened, why the difference is there, but for whatever reason, I figured out that it wasn't giving me the accurate periapsis. So in other words, I have the periapsis currently reading 608.1 on the left side right now with Titan targeted, but on the right side it says our periapsis at Titan is actually 358. So there's a discrepancy in those periapsis numbers, and it's the left side that's going to be more accurate. So the whole point in all of this is that the right side with the map program up and Titan referenced is that only thing I'm getting from that is the line of nodes, just making sure that line of nodes is sitting on our periapsis at Titan. On the left side with Titan targeted, what I'm getting from that is, again, our periapsis altitude, and we want it to be around 600 kilometers and change, and it is. So that looks fine. And you can actually see us approaching Titan both right in front of us. There I just panned around the view. But also on the left MFD, you can see the white sort of dot approaching Titan's orbit and where its sphere of influence is. So I'm just opening an external MFD here for orbit, and that way we can see the G contribution beginning to increase as we drift towards our encounter with Titan. One thing to also note is that the relative inclination for Titan is 11.4 degrees, so that is important. Obviously, we do want to be coming in retrograde. Prograde, because MAV, most importantly, is orbiting Titan prograde. So that is something definitely that you should consider, is just making sure that you're coming in prograde, as well as making sure your periapsis looks good and the line of nodes sits on your periapsis. So all of that looks fine at this point. And we're just continuing to coast closer toward Titan before we start setting up our maneuver. I should say our rendezvous maneuver. So what we're going to do is fall within Titan's strong SOI. So we're going to be looking for a G contribution on the orbit MFD at 0.50 before we do anything else. So at this point, we still have a periapsis right at about 602 kilometers, which is fine for now, honestly. More importantly, that line of nodes sits right on periapsis, as seen on the right side there on IMFD map program with Titan actually referenced. So at this point, before we begin doing anything else, like I said, we're just going to coast closer toward Titan. Rotation. And what I'm going to do is actually just rotate around so that we're looking at Titan, even though we're going to be coming in retrograde to ultimately do the moon orbital insertion burn. This way it's just easier for us to check out Titan. And I'm going to do a quick save right here for you guys. So if you want to pick up basically a Titan encounter with my scenario pack, you can do so. Very cool, though, to watch IMFD on the left side. As you see, we're falling within Titan's SOI here in just a moment. And we're almost there. And there it is. G contribution is now over 0.50. Alright, so I just pressed HUD on the orbit MFD since it hasn't switched already. So we changed the orbit HUD there. So it's actually using Titan as the reference, and we're just going to rotate over here, sort of prograde. And this honestly is not totally necessary, but I just wanted to just keep a nicer view of Titan for the video, and I always enjoy watching that coming in. Alright, so let's go to the target intercept program on IMFD on the left side here, and let's go ahead and target MAV, which is the bar zoom, actually is the name of the vessel in this scenario. And we're going to set up a rendezvous here. I want to make sure that offset is disabled, and it is by default, I believe, but press mode on the left side there to make sure that it is. And the next thing we're going to do is increase our time of ejection. And in fact, I think what we'll do is put it in our time to periapsis. So let's just put it at 4,000. We're a little over that, but that's good for now. Now we're going to go to the time of intercept here, and we're going to increase this number. And what we're going to do is continue increasing this until we get a total delta V down there underneath of en route to a reasonably low number. We can look at the delta V on the right MFD on the map program over there. For the circularization, delta V is at 3,040 meters per second. So we want to find a total delta V that's relatively close to that number. The closer we can get to that circularization delta V, the more efficient our rendezvous maneuver is going to be. Now we can see that the total delta V is coming down. It's around 3,500 meters per second and change. And I'm just going to adjust both the time of ejection and the time of intercept here and try and find the lowest number that I can get for that total delta V. So setting the adjust to 1x will allow me to sort of fine tune it. We reached a relatively low point here, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get it quite as low as the delta V needed to circularize the orbit, as listed again on the IMFD map program on the right side there. However, it's not terrible. It's not as bad as I probably thought it might be. So again, it's not super. Alright, so I'm just continuing to adjust the time of an intercept and time of ejection numbers here. Sort of reaching a low point, it looks like. Okay, so the total delta V has reached pretty much a low point there, but I'm also want to take a look at that EIN number, basically the relative inclination number. And currently it's at negative 5.48 degrees. So I think probably what I want to do is get that down to 0. So let's continue adjusting the time of intercept here. And let's see if we can get the EIN number down, and that is affecting it. So that's good. It's at negative 1.58 now. And it's coming down. Okay, so we went past 0 a little bit. Let's go back up here. And there's negative 0.01, so that's probably going to be close enough for right now. And the total delta V is not really that much more. It's at 3,496 meters per second. So it looks like that will be acceptable for our initial orbital insertion burn here at Titan. So basically we have an intercept set up for MAV. But what's going to happen is we're going to conduct this in 2 burns. We're going to do an initial burn here at periapsis at Titan. And this is going to basically get us in orbit around Titan, but we're still going to maintain a relatively high apoapsis. You can actually see that by the blue circle that goes out away from Titan quite a ways after our orbital insertion burn. And then we'll come back down for a rendezvous with MAV right at that solid bold white line. And then so the second burn, of course, would be conducted at the interception point with MAV, which is basically just going to be matching our velocity with MAV. So we're going to break this up into 2 burns, and we will input the data for each of the 2 burns in our spreadsheet once we complete that. What I'm doing now is just go ahead and rotate around retrograde, because we of course know we're going to be burning retrograde to conduct the orbital insertion burn, and that's really awesome. Check out that atmosphere on Titan. That is just such a thick atmosphere. I think Titan is the 2nd largest moon in the solar system, and it's the only moon that has a substantial atmosphere on it. In fact, its atmosphere is, I'm not even sure how thick its atmosphere is compared to Venus. I didn't look that up, but it's a substantial atmosphere, so it's going to pose an interesting challenge for us to get down and land and get back up through it to rendezvous with Deep Star after we land on the surface. Okay, so the time to ejection is counting down. We're about 420 seconds now. I'm just making small adjustments to the time of encounter to keep the EIN on 0. We might adjust it, yeah, just adjust it one more time here. So that looks fine for now. And we're 200 seconds till the burn. We're gonna open up the burn vector. Just double checking that EIN looked good, so it does. So we'll go back to the burn vector here, and we'll just manually rotate Deep Star toward the burn vector here, and we'll hit auto burn and let IMFD carry out the burn for us as usual. There we go. And the countdown clock is started. So we'll go to 10 times acceleration and let it conduct the burn at 10 times. Okay, here we go, and we're burning. You can watch the delta V that's been applied and what's remaining on the left column of the burn vector on the left side. And on the right side, you'll actually see our orbit begin to change around Titan as we get captured by Titan. Okay, less than 150 seconds. Of course, we are still at 10 times acceleration. IMFD will slow us down to normal time here in a moment. We can look at the orbit MFD on the right side. Take a look at our orbit coming down. We, of course, have been captured by Titan. And the burn's almost completed. Less than a second now. And the burn is done. And looks like IMFD did a pretty good job there. DV remaining was only at 0.01, so I'm not going to mess with that. And we have our intercept set up, so that looks great. Let's put in our delta V number, 66,094 meters per second remaining after the Titan MOI burn. Alright, so it looks like we used 3,012 meters per second for the MOI burn. Now, of course, we're not in a perfectly circular orbit just yet. That will come after the second burn for MAV Rendezvous, and we'll input that data in the last line of the spreadsheet there. Just taking a quick look here. So the second burn for MOI we calculated was 2,933 meters per second. So we ended up using a little bit more than what we calculated. Seems to be a reoccurring theme here, actually. I don't know if it's my flying abilities or the fact that Deep Star is just a fuel guzzler, but in any case, I suppose it is a good thing that we came with all this extra fuel, because it is looking like we might just need it after all. But yeah, we are set up for our interception here. We might have to do just some minor course corrections along the way. I don't expect it should take anything more than some linear RCS to do that. And then, of course, we will conduct the second burn, which is just going to be matching our velocity with MAV. And I'm going to hopefully try and aim for having that completed when we're about 1 kilometer away from MAV. So if all goes well, we'll be orbiting in formation with MAV about 1 kilometer away after our second burn. In the meantime, let's go ahead and put in the nav frequencies here for MAV. Let's see the transponder frequency, 131.45, as I'm just rotating prograde here, hitting kill rotation. And let's see, we're going to scroll down, and it only has one docking port. It's 137.45. It is currently docked to the other vessel, and so we'll have to undock it and dock Deep Star with it so that we can transfer the crew over. But yep, so that's good. And at this point, we just need to coast up to our high apoapsis up there, which is about 2,179 kilometers above the surface. And probably when we get up around apoapsis would be a good time to do the first course correction. We'll just monitor the DV on the interplanetary course program on the left side there, on the target intercept program. And as that climbs up a little bit, we'll just use linear RCS as needed to try and keep it close to 0. That's a spectacular view of orbital sunrise over Titan here, and you can see we're just skirting the top part of the atmosphere. Alright, we're basically on the other side of Titan from our interception point, and so this is probably going to be a good time to do the course correction. Looking at the burn vector, let's see. Okay, yeah, so looking at the burn vector, we're looking at about it was 1.9 something meters per second, so just using a little bit of linear RCS, trying to chase that burn vector across and bringing that down. And that looks, I mean, it's changing rather quickly there, so that's probably good enough. Honestly, it wasn't that far off, so we probably didn't need to mess with it, but I figure, you know, it's not going to take very much, so we'll just go ahead and conduct that course correction. And we'll continue coasting here. We're just about up to our apoapsis. Titan's looking big and beautiful here. Check out that atmosphere. That's great.
Rotation.
Alright, I'm just going to rotate a little bit over toward the left here. It's going to be more of a retrograde position, obviously, for the second burn, because we're going to have to lower that apoapsis down. Essentially, we're going to be circularizing our orbit, matching velocity with MAV. So we know the burn's going to be roughly in that direction, but we'll just rotate around here anyway, so we keep a nice view of Titan as we coast down to the interception point and ultimately our periapsis as well. Okay, so let's do another quick course correction here. Total delta V was at 2.76 meters per second, I guess. And so we'll just use some linear RCS once again. Try to bring that down as close to 0 as we can. Honestly, it wasn't too bad. But I figure the more we can keep that closer to 0, the closer pass we'll have at MAV anyways. So that looks good. Alright, so continue time accelerating, and wow, there comes Saturn just over the horizon. That looks great. We're in plane with Saturn's rings, so unfortunately we're not really getting much of a view of the ring structure, but that's very cool. So we can open up the docking MFD. We're not quite close enough for that signal to come in. Let's just double check we got the frequencies right here. 131.45. Alright, so that looks good. I guess we're just not close enough yet. So we'll continue time accelerating, and there it is. Just popped up actually. So we're 965 kilometers away now. Just trying to look around and see where the vector is. Okay, there's our prograde vector in relation to MAV. IMFD is telling us about just now under 1700 seconds until interception. So we've got a little bit of time to go here. Let me go ahead and always do that. I mean to go to menu and let's select the velocity match program. Go ahead and target MAV and we'll rotate so that we're facing the burn vector. Just go ahead and get that done now so it looks like it's up and to the right. We'll switch over to the orbit HUD so we can actually see our movement without the orbit HUD open. It's actually hard to see any movement at all. The stars in the background really don't come out at all on the video. I can see them on my computer screen, of course, but I don't know, I guess it just doesn't come out very well on the video by the time it's all encoded and up on YouTube. But anyways, we're just about pointed toward the burn vector here, and we'll just keep Deep Star oriented roughly in this direction as we approach MAV, because we know we're going to have to do probably a pretty significant burn here to match velocity with MAV. Okay, let's just switch back over to the docking HUD, and why don't I go ahead and open up an external MFD. That way we can take a look at, we'll switch this over to burn time, and we can put in 488. Actually, the closure velocity is increasing, so let's just put in 490 for right now. So that is 17.5 kilometers in distance. However, the closure velocity is continuing to increase. So I suspect that that distance is going to increase quite a bit more. We'll have to monitor that as we get closer. We just want to make sure that we brake in time. In other words, we want to make sure we match velocity with MAV in time, that we don't hit it or fly past it, but we also don't want to do it too early, or else we'll have many kilometers that we'll have to close down, and it's just not going to be that efficient. So we'll try and get this closer than we did with Deep Star and Earth orbit with Dragon anyway. Alright, so I know we're going to have to continue coasting for quite a ways. We're still 550 kilometers away from MAV, but we'll continue to check the velocity. We can check out the time of encounter there, or time of interception. I keep calling it encounter as if we're going to a planet, but in any case, pretty much the same thing. We're just going to we can just monitor that, update also the delta V on burn time to 600 because it's increasing on the closure velocity. It's not at 600 yet, but it is trending upwards, and with 600 meters per second, now we're looking at 26.2 kilometers in distance to match velocity. So I'd say that's probably getting pretty close to accurate about what we can expect. So I'm thinking once our distance to MAV drops just under 100 kilometers, we can go back down to normal speed and just make sure that we calculate this correctly, because I sure don't want to overshoot it. That looks great. Just get a little bit of a view of Titan there for a minute. We are about 150 kilometers from MAV now, so we're rapidly closing on it, still at 10 times acceleration. And there we go, we're under 100 kilometers. So let's go back to normal time here. And even at normal time, you can see how quickly the distance is closing on the docking MFD there. So I just put in 587 meters per second in burn time, so that's telling me 25.1 kilometers in distance. So we're getting pretty close. Let's go ahead and rotate toward the burn vector, and I'm going to leave the target intercept program open on the left side so we can monitor the time of encounter, counting down in seconds. And we'll open up on the right side, we're going to open up the velocity match program, except that's not velocity match, that's circularization. There we go, there's velocity match. So we already have MAV targeted, so that looks fine. All right, so we can see our distance on the velocity match there, counting down. It's 62 kilometers now, and we can see the burn time and the delta V as well. So we're oriented directly at the burn vector. Let's just update the DV to 580. Actually, it's already 588. Let's just go with 588, and that's 25.215 kilometers. Yes, so I'm thinking around 26 kilometers probably going to be a good target to shoot for. Let's go with 588.5, and it didn't really increase it that much. So I think I'm going to go for 26K. So when our distance is at 26 kilometers away from MAV, I'm going to hit auto burn, and that should get us within 1 kilometer of MAV when we have our velocity matched. So here we go. There's 27, 26, and we're burning. Okay, so hopefully that worked. We'll see how close we get this time around. And we'll just let the velocity match do its thing. We were looking at over 500 meters per second in delta V for that second burn. We can open up orbit for a minute here. You can see our orbit actually changing. Apoapsis is coming down. And by the end of this, our orbit should look identical to MAV's. Alright, so let's go ahead and switch over to the docking MFD. And we're under 5 kilometers away. That closure velocity is still pretty high. Oh boy. Let's hope we slow down here. We are closing pretty quickly on MAV, but oh man, yeah, I'm aiming for 1 kilometer away at engine shutdown. It's gonna have to hurry up and get there because we're already 1.4, 1.3, 1.2. Oh boy, 1.1 kilometer. Okay, so I think we might have done it. Engine is revving back here. IMFD is about done with the burn. There's 1.82 and closure velocity is on 0. Oh, that's not bad at all. 1.082 kilometers. Alright, that is certainly much better than we did with Dragon at Deep Star when we were in low Earth orbit there before we left, but I will take it. Alright, so let's go ahead and rotate around so we get the front of Deep Star pointed at MAV. We'll get a look at it here. Make sure everything looks good. Let's go ahead and put our burn time in, I guess, in a minute. You know, and the other thing I was thinking about is I think the Deep Star uses more delta V for rotating the vessel around than, say, the XR2 because it's such a heavy vessel. So maybe that's something I should have taken into consideration as well for fuel calculations. But in any case, there is MAV in front of us. It looks good. Everything's intact, it looks like anyways. So this is, I would say, a very successful rendezvous. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick save here for you guys if you want to pick up from this point in the scenario pack. Now we'll go ahead and hop over to our spreadsheet and put that delta V remaining in. Okay, so at MAV rendezvous, looks like we used 610 meters per second for the second burn. So what, 3,622? Wow. So we did use a little bit more than what we originally calculated. But I guess we also didn't really calculate for rendezvousing with MAV and Titan orbit. When I had actually figured up the calculations and everything for the flight, I had intended on bringing MAV with us docked to Deep Star, but I ran into a balance issue that Deep Star just couldn't stay pointed prograde while doing a burn with MAV docked to it. I guess it just threw it off balance having MAV on one side and nothing on the other side. At any rate, we are here at Titan. Mav is right in front of us, and we're at the end of this episode, guys. In the next part, we're going to be landing on the surface of Titan. How cool is that? So I'm definitely excited for that. Hope you guys are as well. Listen, guys, really appreciate you following the series. It's been, man, this has just been so much fun. I can't begin to explain how much fun it's been to fly this and to create it for you guys. So I hope you guys are all doing really well, and until the next episode, take care, and we'll see you then.